Greetings, my fellow Decepticons. This is Megatron1384 here with a review for you of Iron Man 3. Shouldn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is going to be full of spoilers. So, if you haven't seen it and you're planning to, then hit stop now. And then come back when you've seen the movie. Okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Y'all still here? Great. Let's do this. Went and saw the movie last night at 10:30, and I gotta be honest, not happy. Didn't like it very much. I'll do the overall plot, and then I'll say what my kind of feelings are about it. The basic plot is that there are a series of terrorist attacks, bombings within the United States by a person who is called the Mandarin. And he keeps broadcasting Osama bin Laden style messages over the TV and actually hacking into the airwaves and everything. Saying that, these attacks are done by him, and he's constantly calling out the President of the United States, saying that these lessons are for him specifically, and that he still hasn't learned them yet, and that there will be a final one soon, and that will do something specifically involving him. In the meanwhile, Tony Stark, Iron Man, is having trouble sleeping and is starting to have anxiety attacks as a result of a post-traumatic stress disorder from the events of the Avengers in New York and everything. Knowing that there's gods and aliens almost dying and all that stuff. Eventually, after a terrorist attack in Jon Favreau's character, Happy Hogan, gets critically injured and ends up in a coma, Tony Stark calls out the Mandarin to the media saying, "Come get me, this isn't about government or politics, it's just good old-fashioned revenge, me and you, here's my address." Quickly, a bunch of Mandarin's agents in helicopters with weapons that are disguised as media helicopters attack Stark's home in Malibu, blows it up, it blows the whole goddamn thing. And then, in the ensuing chaos and everything, Tony Stark ends up automatically flying to into middle of Tennessee, crashing there, out of power, and then he's stuck for like half the movie dealing with his stress disorders and trying to solve the mystery of these explosions and where the Mandarin is and yada 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 yada. Eventually, he does that. Some other stuff happens. I'll get into it. The whole thing ends up coming down to this massive fight and action sequence on a ruined oil tanker, in which they have captured the President of the United States and are going to execute him on public TV. And then the Vice President, who we find out is in the back pocket of, not the Mandarin, but the Advanced Idea Mechanics, AIM. The Vice President's in their back pockets, and when they kill the President, he's going to take over, and obviously he's going to be a pawn for them to move there in lieu of their own interests. It's a big action sequence. At the end of the day, Tony Stark and Iron Man, Colonel Rhodes, a War Machine, it wins, everything's done, blah, whatever. So, I did not like this movie. Not much at all. First of all, the pacing is awful. That part where he ends up stranded, powerless in Tennessee, just completely flounders around for like half an hour or so. And it's not that he needs to be, with his techs and gadgets and everything. I like the concept of the fact that he's stranded away without his gadgets and everything. It's just his brain now that he has to figure out how to, solve the mystery and fix the problems and get himself back up to where he needs to, while simultaneously dealing with these anxiety attacks and PTSD. But the problem with that is that it's so not focused on that, really. The focus, especially in that middle act, he ends up coming across this kid. And, it's him and the kid going back and forth for, 20 minutes or so, off and on and off and on, and occasionally there's a little action sequence in there, too, but, the kid's even involved in that, and it's it just doesn't make any sense, and it's not the tone that we've had in the previous Marvel movies. When Tony Stark is his usual Tony Stark self to other people, whether it's Gwyneth Paltrow, or Justin Hammer, or Colonel Rhodes, or anybody else, it's playful. He's arrogant, but it's playful because these are people that he can actually they can play off each other. The kid, who isn't the worst child actor I've ever seen, but he's not that good. He's not really good either. When he's doing it with a kid, it seems like he's just come across as an asshole. He's talking down and doing his snarky remarks and dismissive nature to a little kid. That's not cool. It's ridiculous. And yeah, that whole middle is just ridiculous. Now I'm gonna get to the biggest thing. The Mandarin. Ben Kingsley. The whole trailers seem to be focused about him, and we're like, what's his plot? What's he doing? How does he fit into this new Marvel universe? Because in the comics, he's all about magic with the 10 rings and everything, and you're like, and people who know the comics are like, oh, it's a tie back into the dude who was a member of the 10 rings, the Afghani terrorist dude in the first Iron Man movie. No, it's not. Not one bit. Because Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin is a red herring. He's a joke. He's not the Mandarin. The Mandarin is just a fictionalized, in the movie universe, fictionalized caricature by the Advanced Idea Mechanics. He ends up being just this British actor who's also a junkie. Who's just playing a bit part. He's just playing a part and has nothing to do with anything. So this entire thing that we're dealing with the first, hour and a half, hour 40 minutes of the movie, finding the Mandarin, is absolutely nothing. Because he's not actually a dude. And he knows barely anything about what's going on. The real villain is this guy who we meet in a flashback at the very beginning of the movie, who Gwyneth Paltrow's character, Pepper Potts, also knows because they used to work together. And I think they used to date. And he's the head of the Advanced Idea Mechanics, AIM. And he ends up being the real villain. Which I wouldn't be against if they didn't have this whole thing with the Mandarin that just ends up being absolutely worthless and pointless and just this gag. It's a joke. It's just a joke, and I hate that. And yeah, the dude who's in charge of AIM, his motivations make no sense. None at all. Because his whole thing is that there's this botanist that you meet in that same flashback in 1999, who she's been working on this thing where these plants are able to regrow limbs, but they're also volatile and so sometimes explode. Well, he recruited her, and they worked and they did this experiment, and now they have all these people, all these soldiers and shit who had lost limbs in various wars and shit, the Gulf War or fucking Iraq and Afghanistan or whatever, and now they're fucking lava people or some weird shit like that. Their limbs have grown back. But these guys get super hot, they can melt metal, they can shoot sometimes fire out of their goddamn mouth, and they can explode. And then reform themselves. So you find out, these terrorist bombings are all these exploding people that then just reform, fucking walk away from it and everything. And it's the tonal shift is all over the goddamn place with this. But, I mean, the dude who's in charge of AIM, his motivations make no sense whatsoever to me. None whatsoever. Because his whole motivation is that in 1999, the flashback that starts off the movie, he's trying to talk to the botanist chick who's with Tony Stark at the moment, and Tony's like, hey, you know what, I'd love to work with you, meet me on the roof in 5 minutes. Obviously just trying to get rid of this dude. So then when he's talking with the science of the chick with the botanist, and then banging her on New Year's and everything, this dude's just standing up on top of the roof. And so he comes back late, and he looks really nerdy with long hair and bad, skin and everything. And then we see him, in the present time, he's very handsome and suave, whatever. And it turns out that, in the end, he's the one in charge of all this, in charge of terrorist bombings, in charge of these extremist lava people. They're called extremist soldiers. And his whole motivation to this, to kill the president and everything, is to kill the president, made the vice president their own pawn, and is going to try to take over the government, is that he is mad at Tony for standing him up. But he's also thanking Tony. It's like, that's not a clear motivation for a villain to be doing all this. You don't just because Tony Stark, a person who already had that reputation for not being serious and just being a drunk, flamboyant playboy, stands you up on New Year's and says he wants to work with you and he doesn't even show up, is not motivation to go on this ridiculous campaign with these soldiers and these and government contracts and blowing up the Grauman's Chinese Theater and a bunch of other fucking places within the United States, and then capturing and murdering the president on public TV. Makes no sense. None. It is not motivation. It's just piecemeal nonsense. The fight scenes are borderline really cool. The action sequences, when there's actually action going on, look great, and it's a lot of fun. But the problem is they keep cutting away from it every, minute or so. Something cool's going on, and they cut away, or they just do something really slapstick and goofy. And it kills the feel, and you can't ride the ride very well. And the humor in this movie as a whole reeks of desperation and self-parody, which it reminds me a lot about the Kick-Ass movie. And I love the Kick-Ass movie. It's a great movie. It's a great movie because it's a great superhero parody movie, and it's a great superhero movie both at the same time. Iron Man is not a parody movie, but it feels more in line with Kick-Ass and Iron Man or Iron Man 2 or any of the Marvel proper movies that led up with Avengers, including Avengers. It is way out of tone from those other movies and feels more in line with Kick-Ass, which would be fine if it's a parody, like I said, but it's not. Iron Man is not a parody movie. And the pacing and the editing is just atrocious. They will cut away from characters like Pepper Potts and this botanist chick. We'll see them leaving Stark's place when the whole thing is getting blown up. And then we'll cut away from them, and then we'll come back to them 30 minutes later for 2 minutes. And then we'll cut away from them again, and then we'll cut back to them again in 20 minutes or so, and be like, oh yeah, what are these guys doing? Turns out, doesn't really matter, because at one point, we haven't seen either of them for a long time, but we know they're together. And then, we think the botanist lady is going to tell Pepper, reveal what's going on so that she knows so that we can get moving towards the damn climax instead of floundering around in Tennessee for no reason. And then Pepper gets captured because this botanist chick is obviously working with the bad guy. And then we don't see him again until another 30 minutes when Tony Stark's captured. And then just kill the botanist lady off without her really doing anything. She tries to, redeem herself for a second, and then is instantly killed, and that's it. So, she has nothing to do with anything. She's just the person who created the process that the villain is using with, the extremist soldiers and everything. She created that experiment, and that was it. Her being still in the movie in the present time had no point to it whatsoever, because she does nothing, and she just ends up dying arbitrarily for no goddamn reason, and doesn't redeem herself or do anything to solve or save the day in any way whatsoever. And that's how this whole movie feels with a lot of the characters. Pepper Potts does almost nothing until the very fucking end of the goddamn movie, and that was telegraphed. You knew it was coming from 30 minutes beforehand. Rhodes, Don Cheadle is Rhodes, War Machine / Iron Patriot now, does almost nothing. We see him at the beginning of the movie, and then we don't see him for at least another hour. At least an hour. And then we see him a couple more times, and then he's there with Tony at the end, but he does almost nothing. He has, one moment of coolness, and he doesn't even get his goddamn armor until, the very fucking end of the movie, and he doesn't do anything with it. He just flies away, saving the president. And the whole movie seems like that. Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan is in a coma after the first 20 minutes of the movie. He is in a coma until the last 2 minutes of the movie. So he's just dropped off entirely. And that's how it feels with everybody that they're doing, except for Tony Stark, the Kid, and the villain. And that's it. They had all these characters who just flounder around, do nothing, contribute little to nothing, and if they do something, it's completely unwarranted because we forgot these guys are even in the goddamn movie. I expected to see more of Rhodes than he got maybe 5 more minutes than he does in the Avengers, and he doesn't appear in the Avengers at all. So it's ridiculous. And just, yeah, the plot was nonsense, the pacing was ridiculous, the humor smells of desperation, self-parody, which it shouldn't, and the action sequences are almost cool until they keep cutting away from it and do something absurd and slapstick in the middle of it that completely ruins that good vibe that you're feeling. And it just, this movie, it seems like somewhat of a heartless cash grab, that the only reason they made Iron Man 3 was to fund all the other movies that they're doing. And that's it. Which is a real disappointment, because Iron Man and Iron Man 2 were some of the better, or at least the first Iron Man was the best of the Marvel movies, including the Avengers. Iron Man 2 was on the lower end, but I still put it above Thor. About the same level as Hulk. But, so yeah, it's just disappointing. It's really disappointing. It's a huge step down. I don't know where I put it in terms of comic book movies, but it's certainly a huge step down. It's certainly well below all the previous 6 Marvel proper movies. It's not Spider-Man 3 or X-Men 3 bad or Daredevil bad. I don't even think it's Ghost Rider bad. But it's somewhere in between Thor. It's somewhere in between Thor and Ghost Rider. Somewhere in between there. And so it's just really disappointing. So yeah, if you need to go see it, go see it. Otherwise, miss it. It doesn't do anything for character development, and it doesn't have anything that it feels like is going to tie into future movies. And it barely ties into the previous movies. They just keep mentioning New York and the Avengers and everything, and so. But they don't talk specifically about it. They're just saying, the kid's going, what happened in New York? How do you feel about New York? Are you upset about what happened in New York? Blah, 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 blah. And Iron Man, Tony Stark the whole time is going, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Why not? It's better than what you're doing right now. So, yeah, that's my review of Iron Man 3, guys. So, until next time, I am still working on the Transformers Prime first 5 episodes, 5 Faces of Darkness, but since it's 5 episodes at once, and I'm new to this whole thing, it's taking a while to record and edit and such forth, but hopefully it'll be up soon. So stay tuned for that, and in the meantime, I'll catch you guys all later. Peace.